Moweni, everyone. Welcome back to Fresh Perspective, where we'll take another look at life. Um, Yesterday was quite tough trying to upload videos and this podcast because of extremely slow internet. So I had to make 3 attempts to upload the podcast, because two of those times it just kind of timed out because it took too long. But here we are today. Welcome back. And as promised yesterday, I'm going to dive into a second way that we avoid taking responsibility for our inner world. So if you missed that, please check it out. Number one in this series is how taking responsibility for these things changes everything. You can go look for that episode. And the one after that was stop taking responsibility for this. That's number 2 in this series. They are marked in the podcast, so you can go check it out there. Anyway, so let's get into it. Here's what I want to try and do. Okay, so in one sentence, the second way that we don't take responsibility for our inner world, those 4 areas, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and actions, is we don't clarify and verbalize our expectations. So you can actually say that this is a kind of a consequence of not taking responsibility for ourselves and our inner world. And I'm going to try and teach you this principle by sharing a story of how I learned it, how I discovered this principle. So my dad was only 57 when he passed away in 2013. And our relationship was kind of a mixed bag. Because on the one hand, my dad had this great sense of humor. I learned a lot from him in terms of having passion, loving life, enjoying good food. And I definitely don't mean like gourmet food. I mean like massive amounts of boerekos, huge amounts of boerekos. So, I learned so much from him, how to, fix things and work with different kinds of tools and just kind of be handy all around. But most of these things I learned from watching him. And on the other hand, I wanted a deeper connection with him. I yearned for having, yearned for deeper conversations where we discussed like bigger issues in life and books that I was reading, but that never happened. So especially in my 20s, I would go visit them, and I was hoping for that kind of deep connection. And when it wouldn't happen, I'd leave at the end of the weekend, and I'd be disappointed, frustrated, sad. Instead of feeling connected to him, I felt abandoned and rejected. Maybe that sounds like strong words for you to use, but that's truly how I felt, which shows you how big my need was for that kind of deep connection with him. And it was only when I got married and my wife and I would go visit my folks that I realized that I did not take responsibility for the things that I could control. I was hoping and wishing for something to happen, something in the external world, my dad's behavior, which I can't control. We discussed that in the previous 2 episodes. But what I'd see is I'd just watch my wife talk to my dad nonstop for an hour and a half, many times during the weekend, just having these great discussions. So she was having the kind of conversations with my dad that I've been longing for 10 years. She was asking all the questions that I never asked him. And so she got the connection that I didn't have. It may sound straightforward to you now, but back then it was like mind-blowing. It was like a whole new world to me. And I quickly realized it was because I had certain expectations that I never even communicated with my dad. He didn't know. And looking back, it was also because I didn't know. I didn't verbalize these expectations because I didn't have clarity on them. I didn't really know this is what I wanted. It was more like a wish and a hope. And because I couldn't clarify it, I missed out on like 10 years of deep connection, probably more. I am very grateful, though, for the 6 years that I was able to have. You know, the 6 years that I had that kind of deep connection with him, and we could talk about things in a different way. And to be very honest, it wasn't exactly the way I wanted it, but it was like way more than I got from not taking responsibility and not understanding my expectations. So let me try and break it down and apply to what I've been discussing about responsibility and our inner world. So let me just go through it again. There's 4 areas: beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and actions. I know I'm repeating it a lot in these episodes, but I really want that to stick. It's easy to forget. So here's how it worked in terms of how I was struggling in my relationship with my dad. So I believed that my dad knew and understood that I wanted a certain kind of connection with him, a deeper connection with him. I thought that it would magically happen when I go visit, that it would just somehow we start a conversation that will go in that direction. And because it didn't happen, I felt frustrated, disappointed, abandoned, and rejected. And I would become withdrawn and quiet, and, as the weekend progressed until I had to leave. And I always, when I left, like I mentioned before, I felt rejected and abandoned, and sometimes even angry at him, for not doing something that he didn't know he should do, which is very unfair. So here's what it would sound like if I knew back then what I know now, if I really understood this. So I would believe that it was my responsibility to take control for what I can control and initiate the deep connection that I wanted. I would think of different questions to ask my dad about his life and the things he learned during his different experiences. Like he was in the army back in the day. And, during those 6 years, I asked him a lot of questions about that. And it was fascinating to hear some of the stories of his friends, things I never knew. So, 30 years of not knowing certain things about my dad, especially his time in the army. He was one of the guys that had to remove the mines, which is obviously quite intense and stressful. So I learned a lot about that and how he approached it and what he faced. So my question to you, my dearest friends, the question is, let me just get the grammar right. Sorry, Mr. Molyneux, my grade 7 teacher. My question is, are you taking responsibility to clarify and act on your expectations? Are you truly taking responsibility? If ever you've been disappointed with someone else, chances are you're expecting something from them that's unrealistic, that they are not aware of. And even sometimes when we've communicated it, it's just not possible for them to give you that, to give you what you wanted, to meet that expectation. So it was totally unrealistic of me to expect my father to engage in the way I wanted him to engage. For 2 reasons. One, I never communicated this need, this expectation. And secondly, he wasn't the kind of person who would just start discussions on topics like that. He just wouldn't initiate things like that. So here is a simple but very powerful tool you can use to help you clarify and take responsibility for your expectations. As an example, I will focus on a person or relationship, but you can apply it to almost anything in your life. So I'm going to give you some sentence stems. So a sentence stem is just a sentence that's incomplete and you complete it. So here's the first one. What I expect from my is. So what are you expecting from whom? Second, what I usually get is. Third sentence, how that makes me feel is, and then I. So that's the emotion and the action. And then use this to clarify what you can actually take responsibility for, what you can actually do. So here's the sentence. If instead I take complete responsibility and I have a more realistic expectation, sorry, no, I messed that one up. If instead I take complete responsibility, a more realistic expectation would be, and what I can do to create that is. So what's a more realistic expectation and what can you do to create that? Secondly, or lastly, this will make me feel and drive away my fear of. So I hope that helps you, that exercise, and then go back and listen to it again, write those sentence stems down and see what comes up for you. Not only exactly what your expectations are, but how you can make them more realistic, clarify them, and then take responsibility to make it happen, to take control of what you can control, which is your inner world. So if there's someone that you were thinking of while you were reading through this, take responsibility and call them. Control your inner world. It doesn't mean that you will get exactly what you want, because you know you can only influence another person, you cannot control them. But it will definitely get you much more of what you need. Not only in your relationship with that person, but also in your relationship with yourself. So it's applicable to people, but also situations, and also to your relationship with yourself. So please make that call today. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for tuning in again. And remember, if you change your mind, you can change your life. Much love from me, Francois, out. Bye-bye.